The town of Clearwater was as ordinary as it got. Nestled between rolling hills and surrounded by thick forests, it was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors, and nothing exciting ever happened. That is, until strange things started to occur. It began with small, unexplainable events. Farmers woke up to find their cattle gone without a trace. Cornfields that had been lush one day were flattened the next, as if something heavy had rolled over them. At night, people reported seeing bright lights hovering above the trees, only for them to vanish when someone tried to get closer. Most folks shrugged it off, probably just weather balloons or teenagers playing pranks. But Emily Carter wasn't so sure. Emily was a science teacher at Clearwater High School. She loved teaching her students about the stars and planets, often spending her evenings outside with her old telescope. One chilly night, while scanning the sky, she noticed something odd. Just above the forest line, there seemed to be ripples in the air, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But it wasn't summer, and there was no sun baking the ground. The ripples shimmered faintly, almost invisible unless you looked closely. Intrigued, Emily adjusted her telescope, trying to focus on the spot. Whatever it was, it didn't move like a plane or a drone. It hovered silently, then disappeared altogether. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd seen something important. The next morning, she decided to investigate. Grabbing her camera and a notebook, she drove to the edge of the forest where she'd spotted the strange phenomenon. The area looked normal enough. Trees swaying gently in the breeze, birds chirping, but something felt off. As she walked deeper into the woods, she found patches of scorched earth, as though lightning had struck the ground repeatedly. There were no storm clouds last night, she thought. What could have caused this? Back home, Emily pored over her photos and notes. Nothing concrete jumped out at her, but the mystery gnawed at her curiosity. She mentioned it to Jake Miller, her neighbor and occasional handyman. Jake was skeptical at first. Probably just some weird weather, he said, wiping grease off his hands after fixing his truck. But when Emily showed him the pictures of the scorched patches, even he admitted they were strange. Maybe we should set up some cameras, Jake suggested. If whatever it is shows up again, we'll catch it on video. Emily liked the idea. Together, they rigged a few motion-activated cameras around the forest's edge. Over the next few days, the cameras captured glimpses of movement, blurry shapes darting across the frame, flashes of light streaking through the trees. None of it was clear enough to prove anything, but it was enough to make Emily wonder if they weren't alone. Meanwhile, far above Earth, aboard a sleek, otherworldly ship, the aliens watched. Their cloaking technology rendered them invisible to human eyes, or so they believed. Zoreth, their leader, stood confidently before his crew. "Humans are simple creatures," he declared. "They lack the awareness to notice us. We can observe freely." But Kale, a younger member of the crew, wasn't so certain. He had been monitoring the humans closely and noticed something unusual. A woman with a telescope, pointing it toward their ship. Could she see them? Or was it just coincidence? For now, he kept his doubts to himself. But deep down, he felt uneasy. Humans might not be as blind as they seemed. As the days passed, Emily grew more determined to uncover the truth. Little did she know, her curiosity was about to lead her, and all of humanity, into an encounter that would change everything. The strange footage from the cameras was enough to convince Emily that something unusual was happening in Clearwater. She couldn't explain the blurry shapes or the flashes of light, but one thing was clear: whatever it wasn't normal. Determined to dig deeper, she shared the clips with Jake, who suggested they involve someone else. "We need someone who knows how to make sense of this stuff," he said. "Maybe Sarah Bennett." Sarah was a local journalist known for her curiosity and knack for uncovering stories. She worked part-time at the Clearwater Gazette, writing articles about town events and human interest pieces. Emily hesitated at first. She didn't want to cause panic, but Jake convinced her that Sarah might be able to help without blowing things out of proportion. When Sarah arrived at Emily's house, she was immediately intrigued. The grainy footage played on a laptop screen, showing fleeting glimpses of movement in the forest. "What do you think it is?" Sarah asked, leaning closer. Emily shrugged. "I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's not natural." Sarah's eyes lit up. This was exactly the kind of story she loved, a mystery waiting to be solved. Over the next few days, Sarah began asking questions around town. She interviewed farmers whose livestock had gone missing and residents who claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky. At first, many people dismissed her inquiries as nonsense. "Probably just kids messing around," one farmer muttered. But others were more open, sharing their own unsettling experiences. A woman named Linda told Sarah about hearing strange humming noises late at night, while another man described seeing a glowing orb hovering over his backyard. As Sarah pieced together the information, she realized the sightings seemed to center around the same area where Emily and Jake had set up their cameras. Convinced there was a pattern, she wrote an article for the Gazette titled "Mystery in the Forest: What's Really Going On?" The piece was cautious, avoiding wild speculation, but it hinted at the possibility of something extraordinary happening in Clearwater. The article caught the attention of Dr. Alan Hayes, a retired astrophysicist living 2 towns over. He had spent decades studying the stars and planets before retiring to a quiet life of gardening and reading. When he read Sarah's article online, he felt a spark of excitement he hadn't felt in years. The descriptions of lights in the sky and unexplained phenomena reminded him of theories he'd once explored about extraterrestrial activity. Without hesitation, he contacted Emily through the email address listed at the end of the article. A few days later, Dr. Hayes arrived in Clearwater, carrying a suitcase full of equipment. He was a tall, wiry man with silver hair and glasses that made him look like a character from an old science fiction movie. Emily greeted him warmly, grateful for the help. Together, they reviewed the footage and discussed possible explanations. Dr. Hayes suggested setting up more advanced monitoring tools, sensors to detect electromagnetic activity, and high-resolution cameras to capture clearer images. While they worked, Cale, the young alien aboard the cloaked ship, continued to observe Emily and her growing team. His unease deepened as he watched them install new devices around the forest. Humans were resourceful, he thought, more resourceful than Zorath gave them credit for. He noticed how they collaborated, sharing ideas and working together despite their differences. It was fascinating and concerning. Back on the ship, tensions simmered between Cale and Zorath. "They're just animals," Zorath insisted during a meeting. "Their behavior is predictable. They'll forget about us soon enough." Cale wanted to argue, but knew better than to challenge his leader openly. Instead, he quietly requested permission to conduct a closer observation mission. Reluctantly, Zorath agreed, sending Cale and 2 others to gather more data on the ground. That night, as Emily and Jake tested the new equipment, they felt a strange sensation, a faint buzzing in the air, almost like static electricity. They glanced at each other, unsure what to make of it. Unbeknownst to them, Cale and his team had landed nearby, hidden by their cloaking technology. For the first time, humans and aliens were closer than ever, though neither side fully realized it yet. Emily stared into the dark forest, her heart racing. Something was out there, something big, and whatever it was getting harder to ignore. The new equipment Dr. Hayes brought to Clearwater was far more advanced than anything Emily or Jake had used before. It included sensors capable of detecting electromagnetic waves, infrared cameras to spot heat signatures, and even a device designed to pick up faint vibrations in the air. Together, they set everything up in a clearing near the forest's edge, hoping to catch something definitive this time. For days, the group worked tirelessly, monitoring the data and reviewing recordings late into the night. At first, nothing unusual showed up, just the usual sounds of crickets chirping and wind rustling through the trees. But then, on the 4th night, something changed. The electromagnetic sensors spiked suddenly, showing a surge of activity that didn't match any natural phenomenon. Almost simultaneously, the infrared camera captured a faint, blurry shape moving through the woods. It wasn't an animal. It was too large and moved too smoothly. Dr. Hayes leaned closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "This is extraordinary," he murmured. "Whatever it is, it's not part of our world." Emily felt a mix of excitement and fear. They were finally getting answers, but those answers raised even more questions. Sarah, who had been documenting every step of their investigation, couldn't resist writing another article for the Gazette. This time, she titled it "Clearwater Mystery Deepens. Are We Alone?" Though she avoided using words like aliens or extraterrestrials, the implication was clear enough to grab attention. The article spread quickly, sparking interest beyond Clearwater. People from neighboring towns started showing up, some curious, others skeptical. A few claimed to have seen strange things themselves, adding to the growing list of reports. Meanwhile, Cale and his team continued their observations from within the forest. Their cloaking technology kept them hidden, but Cale couldn't shake the feeling that humans were closing in. He watched as Emily and her group fine-tuned their equipment, marveling at their determination. These creatures weren't just blindly stumbling around. They were clever, persistent, and surprisingly united in their efforts. It made him question Zoreth's belief that humans were primitive and unworthy of notice. Back aboard the alien ship, Zoreth grew increasingly impatient. When Cale reported the humans' progress, he dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "They're guessing blindly," Zoreth said. "Even if they detect anomalies, they'll never understand what they're seeing. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs." But Cale wasn't so sure. He argued that humans were learning faster than expected. "If we underestimate them, we risk exposure," he warned. "And if they discover us, they may react unpredictably." Zoreth scowled, irritated by Cale's persistence. "Fine," he snapped. "Stay on the surface longer. Gather more data. But don't interfere. We can't afford to draw attention to ourselves." As the days passed, Emily and her team noticed patterns in the data they collected. The electromagnetic spikes always occurred at specific times, shortly after sunset, and seemed to follow a rhythmic sequence, almost like a code. Dr. Hayes suggested it might be a form of communication. "If these are intelligent beings," he explained, "they could be sending signals to each other." Jake wasn't convinced. "Or maybe it's just some kind of machine doing its thing," he said. "We don't know for sure." Despite his skepticism, he helped set up additional sensors to track the patterns more closely. One evening, while reviewing the latest recordings, Emily spotted something that sent chills down her spine. In one of the infrared clips, there was a faint outline, a humanoid figure standing among the trees. It was hazy, barely visible, but unmistakably shaped like a person. She called Jake and Dr. Hayes over immediately. "Look at this," she whispered, pointing at the screen. Dr. Hayes adjusted his glasses, studying the image carefully. "It's distorted, but it's definitely there," he said. "This could be proof of, well, something extraordinary." Unbeknownst to them, Cale was watching from nearby. He stood motionless, his cloaking device masking his presence. For a moment, he considered stepping forward, revealing himself to these determined humans. But he hesitated, unsure of what might happen next. His mission was to observe, not engage. Yet, as he looked at Emily and her team, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of admiration. Humans were proving to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the bigger picture remained elusive. Whatever was hiding in the forest, it was closer than ever, and soon it would no longer be able to stay hidden. The discovery of the humanoid figure in the infrared footage left Emily, Jake, and Dr. Hayes both excited and uneasy. They knew they were onto something big, but they also realized the risks involved. If their suspicions were correct, if there really were aliens watching them, they had no idea how these beings might react if they felt threatened. Determined to learn more, Emily came up with a plan. "We need to get closer," she said one evening as they reviewed the data. "If we can set up cameras deeper in the forest, maybe we'll catch something clearer." Jake wasn't thrilled about venturing into the woods at night, but he agreed it was worth a try. Together, they packed flashlights, cameras, and recording equipment, then headed out under the cover of darkness. The forest was eerily quiet as they moved carefully through the trees. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made them pause, glancing around nervously. Dr. Hayes stayed behind to monitor the sensors back at the clearing, leaving Emily and Jake to handle the setup. As they reached a spot near where the humanoid figure had been spotted, Emily noticed something odd. A faint shimmer in the air, almost like heat waves rising off pavement. She pointed it out to Jake, who squinted but couldn't see anything. "I think we're close," Emily whispered. She crouched down to adjust one of the cameras when suddenly, a soft humming sound filled the air. It was low and vibrating, sending a shiver down her spine. Jake grabbed her arm. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice tense. Before she could answer, the bushes nearby rustled. Both of them froze, staring wide-eyed at the source of the noise. Out of the corner of her eye, Emily caught a glimpse of something. A tall, slender shape moving silently between the trees. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. The outline flickered faintly, as though struggling to stay hidden. "Did you see that?" Emily gasped, pointing toward the figure. Jake nodded, gripping his flashlight tightly. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, without warning, the shape vanished, leaving only silence behind. They quickly finished setting up the camera and hurried back to the clearing, hearts pounding. When they told Dr. Hayes what they'd seen, he listened intently, his expression serious. "This confirms it," he said. "Whatever is out there isn't just observing us. It's interacting with its environment. And now it knows we're looking for it." Unbeknownst to them, Cale and his team had been watching the entire time. The humming sound had come from their cloaking devices malfunctioning briefly due to interference from the humans' equipment. Though they managed to remain mostly invisible, the brief exposure worried Cal. He knew Zorath would be furious if he found out, but he couldn't deny the evidence anymore. Humans were far more perceptive than anyone had anticipated. Back on the ship, Cale reported the incident to Zorath, omitting the part about the malfunction. "They're getting too close," he warned. "Their technology is primitive, but they're adapting quickly. We need to reconsider our approach." Zorath's response was sharp and dismissive. "You've spent too much time observing them," he snapped. "It's clouding your judgment. Continue your mission, but do not engage." "Understood." Cale nodded reluctantly, though doubt lingered in his mind. As he returned to the surface, he found himself drawn to the humans' determination. Despite their fear, they kept pushing forward, driven by curiosity and courage. It was a trait he admired, and one that made him question whether Zorath's orders were truly in their best interest. That night, Emily and Jake reviewed the footage from the new camera. To their astonishment, it captured a blurry but unmistakable image of the figure they'd seen earlier. Its form was elongated and smooth, unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Excited yet terrified, they shared the clip with Dr. Hayes and Sarah. "This is real," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We're not imagining things." As the group debated their next move, Cale watched from the shadows. He knew the humans were closing in, and sooner or later, they would uncover the truth. The question was, what would happen when they did? The blurry image of the alien figure sent a wave of both excitement and fear through Emily, Jake, Dr. Hayes, and Sarah. They knew they were on the verge of something incredible, proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. But they also realized the potential danger. If these beings felt threatened, who knew how they might respond? Emily suggested taking things a step further. "We've seen them, but they're still hiding," she said during one of their late-night meetings. "What if we could force them to reveal themselves?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Force them? That sounds risky." Emily nodded. "It is. But if we can disrupt whatever technology they're using to stay invisible, Maybe we'll get answers. Dr. Hayes supported the idea. He explained that their cloaking devices likely relied on electromagnetic fields to bend light around them. If they could create a strong enough pulse, it might interfere with the aliens' tech. Together, they sketched out a plan. Using parts from Jake's workshop and some components borrowed from Dr. Hayes' equipment, they built a device capable of emitting an electromagnetic pulse, EMP. It wasn't perfect, but it was their best shot. The night they decided to test the EMP device, the group gathered near the forest's edge. Emily held the device, her hands trembling slightly. "Ready?" she asked, looking at the others. Jake gave her a thumbs up, though his face was pale. Dr. Hayes adjusted his glasses, trying to appear calm. Sarah stood back, recording everything on her phone. "Let's do this," she whispered. As Emily activated the device, a low hum filled the air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, there was a flash, a ripple of light spreading outward like a shockwave. The trees seemed to shimmer, and then, for the first time, the aliens became visible. 3 tall, slender figures stood nearby, their forms sleek and metallic, with glowing patterns running along their bodies. Their eyes, or what appeared to be eyes, glowed faintly as they turned toward the humans. Everyone froze, staring in awe and terror. The aliens didn't move aggressively. Instead, they seemed just as surprised as the humans. Emily lowered the EMP device slowly, unsure what to do next. One of the figures stepped forward. It was Cal. Though no one knew his name yet, they could sense he was different from the others. His posture was less rigid, almost hesitant. Back on the alien ship, Zorath watched the scene unfold through a live feed. His expression darkened with anger. "They've exposed us," he growled. "This is unacceptable." He ordered reinforcements to prepare for deployment, intending to silence the humans once and for all. But Cal intervened over the communication link. "Wait," he urged. "They mean no harm. They're curious, like us." Zorath scoffed. "Curiosity won't save them. Humans are unpredictable. We must act before they pose a greater threat." Cal hesitated, torn between loyalty to his leader and his growing respect for the humans. Finally, he made a decision. "Give me one more chance," he said. "I'll handle this." Meanwhile, back in the forest, Emily found the courage to speak. "We don't want to hurt you," she said slowly, raising her hands to show she was unarmed. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "We just want to understand." The aliens exchanged silent signals, their glowing patterns shifting rapidly. Cal tilted his head, studying Emily intently. Then, to everyone's surprise, he mimicked her gesture, raising one of his long arms in what looked like a sign of peace. Jake let out a shaky laugh. "Well, that's something." Dr. Hayes scribbled notes furiously, while Sarah filmed the entire exchange, her hands trembling with excitement. For the first time, humanity and an extraterrestrial species had made contact, not through violence or fear, but through curiosity and mutual caution. But the moment was short-lived. In the distance, the sound of engines roared as more alien ships descended, surrounding the clearing. Zorath had ignored Cal's plea and sent reinforcements. Spotlights illuminated the area, casting harsh shadows over the forest. Emily and her group huddled together, unsure what would happen next. Cal stepped forward again, positioning himself between the humans and the incoming ships. His glowing patterns flared brightly, signaling defiance. Whatever happened next, he was determined to protect the fragile connection he'd helped create. The tension in the clearing was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emily, Jake, Dr. Hayes, and Sarah stood frozen, their eyes darting between Cal and the alien ships now hovering overhead. The bright spotlights from the vessels bathed the forest in an eerie glow, making it hard to see clearly. Despite the fear bubbling inside her, Emily couldn't help but notice how Cal remained calm, standing his ground between the humans and the newcomers. One of the larger ships descended lower, its sleek surface gleaming under the artificial light. A deep hum filled the air as a figure emerged. It was Zoreth, the leader of the aliens. His presence commanded attention. Unlike Kel, who seemed almost approachable, Zoreth radiated authority and distrust. His glowing patterns pulsed angrily as he scanned the group of humans. "This is unacceptable," Zoreth said, his voice resonating in their minds rather than through sound. It startled everyone except Kel, who had expected this reaction. "You have exposed us. You cannot be trusted." Emily swallowed hard but forced herself to speak. "We didn't mean any harm," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We just wanted to understand. We're not enemies." Zoreth's gaze lingered on her for a moment before shifting to Kale. "You allowed this to happen," he accused, his tone sharp. "You let them get too close." Kale stepped forward, his glowing patterns softening slightly. "They are more intelligent than we thought," he replied. "They adapted quickly and showed no aggression. If we respond with hostility, we risk turning them against us." Zoreth's expression hardened. "Humans are unpredictable. They will exploit anything they can. We must leave this planet immediately and ensure they forget about us." Before Cal could respond, Jake spoke up. "Forget about you?" he asked, his voice rising. "After all this, you think we're just gonna go back to our lives and pretend nothing happened?" Dr. Hayes nodded, stepping beside Emily. "He's right. Humanity won't stop asking questions. Even if you erase our memories, someone else will find you eventually. Hiding isn't the answer." For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Zoreth studied the humans carefully, his glowing patterns flickering as though processing their words. Finally, he turned to Kale. "If you believe so strongly in these creatures, then prove it. Convince me they deserve a chance." Kale hesitated, glancing at Emily and her group. He knew this was a pivotal moment, not just for the humans, but for his own people as well. Taking a deep breath, he addressed Zoreth. "Let me stay here as a liaison," he offered. "I'll teach them about us, and learn from them in return. If they show they can be trusted, we'll have gained potential allies instead of enemies." Zoreth's response was slow and measured. "Very well," he said finally. "But if they betray us, the consequences will fall on you." With that, the ships began to ascend, disappearing into the night sky as suddenly as they'd arrived. The spotlights faded, leaving the forest cloaked in darkness once more. Everyone exhaled deeply, realizing the danger had passed for now. As the adrenaline wore off, Emily approached Cal cautiously. "Thank you," she said softly, "for standing up for us." Cal's glowing patterns dimmed slightly, almost as if he were smiling. "You're welcome," he replied, his mental voice gentle. "But this is only the beginning. There is much we must learn from each other." Over the next few days, Cal stayed in Clearwater, working closely with Emily, Jake, Dr. Hayes, and Sarah. Together, they began laying the groundwork for communication, using simple gestures, drawings, and even math to bridge the gap between their species. Though progress was slow, the effort brought hope. For the first time, humanity had proof that they weren't alone, and the possibility of peaceful coexistence felt within reach. But questions still lingered. Why had the aliens come to Earth in the first place? What secrets did they hold about the universe? And most importantly, could trust truly grow between two such different civilizations? The presence of Cal in Clearwater had become both a blessing and a challenge. While Emily, Jake, Dr. Hayes, and Sarah worked tirelessly to build trust between humans and the Valens, tensions outside the small town were growing. News of the aliens' existence spread far beyond Clearwater, sparking debates across the country. Some people saw Cal as proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe, a chance for peace and progress. Others viewed him as a threat, fueling fear and paranoia. Military officials arrived in increasing numbers, setting up checkpoints around Clearwater. They claimed it was for security, but their intentions weren't clear. Soldiers patrolled the streets, questioning residents and monitoring every move. Emily found herself caught in the middle, trying to protect Kale while navigating pressure from those who wanted answers or control. One evening, as the group gathered in Emily's living room, the mood was tense. Dr. Hayes adjusted his glasses, flipping through pages of notes. "We need to prepare for what's coming," he said. "If the military gets too involved, they might try to take Kale by force." Jake leaned forward, his arms crossed. "And then what? Lock him up in some lab? Experiment on him?" Sarah shook her head. "That can't happen. We've made so much progress. If they separate us from Kale now, everything we've built could fall apart." Kale listened silently, his glowing patterns dimmed with concern. He understood enough of their language to grasp the gravity of the situation. "I won't let my presence cause harm to your people," he said softly, his voice resonating in their minds. "If leaving is the only way to keep you safe, I will go." "No," Emily said firmly. "You're not leaving. Not like this. We've come too far to give up now." The next morning, the tension escalated. A convoy of military vehicles rolled into town, led by General Roberts, a stern man with a reputation for being ruthless. He called a meeting at the community center, demanding that Kale be handed over for analysis. The townspeople packed the room, divided in their opinions. Some cheered the general's demands, while others shouted in protest. Emily stood up, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Kale isn't a weapon or a science experiment," she said. "He's here to help us understand each other. If you take him away, you'll destroy any chance of peace." General Roberts glared at her. "Peace?" he snapped. "How do we know these aliens aren't planning an invasion? Trusting them is reckless." Before Emily could respond, Kale stepped forward. His glowing patterns flared brightly, drawing everyone's attention. "I am here because I chose to stay," he said, addressing the crowd. "My people came to observe, not to harm. But if you force conflict, you leave us no choice but to defend ourselves." The room fell silent. For a moment, even General Roberts seemed unsure of how to proceed. Then, unexpectedly, a voice broke through the crowd. It was Linda, the farmer who had reported strange humming noises weeks earlier. "Enough," she shouted. "We're acting like scared children instead of thinking adults. Look at what Kale has done. He's shown us there's more to the universe than just us. Isn't that worth protecting?" Her words struck a chord. Slowly, others began nodding in agreement. Even some of the soldiers looked uneasy. General Roberts clenched his jaw, but realized he was outnumbered. Reluctantly, he ordered his men to stand down for now. That night, Kale thanked the group for standing by him. "Your courage gives me hope," he said. "But this is only the beginning. Zorath still doubts humanity. If we are to build true trust, we must show them that cooperation is possible." Emily nodded, determination in her eyes. "Then let's prove him wrong. Together." As the days passed, Clearwater became a symbol of unity. Residents rallied around Kale, sharing meals, stories, and ideas. Humans and Valens were learning from each other, step by step. But above Earth, Zorath watched closely, waiting for the slightest misstep. The fragile bond between species hung in the balance, and everyone knew the hardest challenges were yet to come. The days that followed marked a turning point for Clearwater, and perhaps for all of humanity. With General Roberts and his soldiers temporarily withdrawn, the town became a hub of collaboration between humans and Kale. The once ordinary community transformed into a place where curiosity outweighed fear and cooperation replaced conflict. Emily, Jake, Dr. Hayes, and Sarah worked tirelessly alongside Kale to bridge the gap between their species, proving that understanding could grow even in the face of uncertainty. Kale shared more about his people's technology, explaining how it worked without revealing secrets that might endanger Earth. In return, humans introduced him to their culture, music, art, food, and stories of resilience. One evening, as they sat around a campfire, Jake handed Kale a marshmallow roasted over the flames. Though Kale couldn't eat it, He appreciated the gesture, his glowing patterns flickering warmly in response. "This is what makes your kind special," he said softly. "You find joy in simple things." Word of Clearwater's success spread far beyond its borders. Scientists, diplomats, and curious visitors arrived from across the globe, eager to witness the unprecedented partnership. Governments began drafting agreements to ensure peaceful interactions with the Valens, while schools started teaching lessons about interstellar diplomacy. For the first time, humanity looked outward, not with fear, but with hope. But not everyone was ready to embrace change. Zorath remained unconvinced, watching from afar as tensions simmered among his own crew. Some supported Cal's efforts, inspired by the progress in Clearwater. Others sided with Zorath, arguing that trusting humans was too risky. The divide threatened to fracture the Valen fleet, leaving Cal caught between two worlds. One night, under a sky filled with stars, Emily found Cal standing alone near the forest's edge. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Cal turned to her, his glowing patterns dimmed with worry. "I've spent my life following orders, believing humans were unworthy of trust. But now, I see something different, something worth protecting." Emily smiled softly. "Change is hard, for us and for you. But if we keep working together, maybe we can show your people that peace is possible." Determined to prove his point, Cal sent a message to Zorath, inviting him to visit Clearwater. At first, Zorath refused, dismissing the idea as reckless. But when reports of humanity's creativity and unity reached the fleet, he reluctantly agreed to observe secretly. Disguised by his cloaking device, he watched as humans and Valens worked side by side, solving problems and sharing knowledge. He saw children drawing pictures of aliens and spaceships, their laughter filling the air. And he witnessed Emily and her team presenting new ideas for cooperation, showing that humanity was capable of growth. Zorath's doubts began to waver. When Cal approached him later, his leader's expression had softened slightly. "Perhaps you were right," Zorath admitted. "Humans are unpredictable, but they are also full of potential." With Zorath's approval, the Valens officially extended an invitation to humanity. They proposed forming an alliance to face the greater cosmic threat looming in deep space. It wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But for the first time, both species stood united, ready to work toward a shared future. As the months passed, Clearwater became a symbol of hope. A monument was erected in the center of town, a statue of a human hand reaching out to touch an alien figure, glowing faintly in tribute to Cal's courage. Humanity had taken its first step into the stars, guided by curiosity, empathy, and determination. Cal stayed on Earth, serving as an ambassador between worlds. Though he missed his people, he knew his mission was far from over. Together, humans and Valens faced the unknown, proving that even the most unlikely connections could lead to extraordinary outcomes. And as Emily gazed up at the night sky, she felt a quiet sense of pride. The universe was vast, but so was the potential for unity.